Today, we dive into the roller coaster of emotions when life throws unexpected challenges our way. Whether that's from shock or disbelief to healing and growth, we explore how families can navigate these trials together. We're going to learn some practical tips for managing emotions and fostering that open communication, as well as finding fulfillment in the middle of those challenges. Join us as we uncover the resilience within and emerge stronger from those unexpected twists and turns. Let's jump in. Hey parents, welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. Do you want to raise your kids better and have a stronger marriage? Are you up late at night researching marriage and parenting tools and self-care tips? Do you start each day hoping for deeper connections and less chaos, but it ends with family arguments and going 12 different directions again? My name's Kendra, wife, mom, therapist, and growth enthusiast. It wasn't until I discovered how to fulfill my unmet needs that I was finally able to show up as my best self as a spouse and parent. I realized that by meeting my needs, I could more fully meet the needs of my family with more energy and less resentment. In this podcast, I teach parents skills like boundary setting, prioritizing personal needs, communication, and claiming ownership. Just like my clients, you'll be shocked by the improvement in your marriage, parenting, and personal life when you focus on fulfilling your important unmet needs. Ready to prioritize yourself so you can quit mentally throat punching people? Then grab those earbuds and head outside, and let's walk and talk. Welcome back, my friends, to episode number 110, When the Unexpected Happens, Understanding Healing and Moving Forward in Family Trials. This is not an episode I particularly wanted to do, which might surprise you because I seem to love all of the things, but this is a little more vulnerable for me. And when I thought about maybe foregoing doing this episode since I'm still in the thick of it, I realized that that is not practicing authenticity or vulnerability, which I very much preach. So I'm going to give more self-disclosure today because I know that many of you have similar things happening. And what helps most is hearing that someone else understands, and maybe they're a few steps ahead in navigating it and can help you in your own journey. So that is why we are going into it today. But before I go right into my story, I want to quickly share that you can go to fulfillment.therapist and sign up for one-on-one coaching. This is for you if you just need a little bit more, and maybe you're not prepared for full-blown therapy, but you want to work with a professional that can speak to that life component aspect as well as therapy, and you want something that merges those two. So maybe not sitting in your feelings and talking about all those things all the time, but more of an action plan where you can also explore past patterns and the therapeutic avenues, but more focused on accelerated growth and fulfillment. So if that is something that you've been craving and you've wanted, hop on to fulfillmenttherapy.org and sign up now, because those prices right now are currently the same as the going mental health rate, and they will increase over time. So get a spot while you can, while it's still lower. Now let's jump back into this episode on what to do when the unexpected happens. When life throws us some unexpected challenges, our first instinct may be shock or even disbelief, but it's our actions after that that define our resilience. What could these setbacks be? Well, they might be sudden illness, or financial setbacks, or relationship conflicts. There's a variety of things that this might entail. Faith challenges, whatever these are. Addiction of a family member. There are so many things that this could be. But these principles apply to a variety of challenges. So I want you to think about your particular challenge that feels overwhelming and stressful to you right now, that you weren't quite prepared for. Do you have that in your mind? I want you to think about your initial response. Did you have some shock or denial? Or did you feel overwhelmed? Did you shut down? it's important to acknowledge that these feelings exist and seek support from loved ones or even professionals. And it's especially important to remember that stress during these times of these disasters is so natural, and it does not indicate weakness. Now, my friends, I emphasize that because I'm telling myself that. Kendra, you are not weak. This is a normal part of the human experience. You are okay. You don't have to keep apologizing for having these feelings or this response. Now, you might be wondering, okay, what the heck happened? Well, I'll go into it right now. Like I said, hesitantly because it still hurts. So my husband's been interviewing with jobs for quite a while, and he had waited for this one particular job that was a perfect fit for him. He is a counselor, and he has been in that industry for a long time, and the burnout rate is very high for counselors, especially in the substance use field, which he had been in for many years, because the recidivism rate is so high, and you keep getting those clients coming back in with relapses, and it can just be really heartbreaking. Well, he knew that he needed to get out of this space because it was affecting his mental and emotional health and our family dynamic, and I fully supported that. I completely understood that. So he had been looking, and he found a great job as a director of a company. He would be completely responsible for the outreach for this company, for the whole valley that we are in, all of the cities around us in Idaho near Boise. So he would just be socializing all day and talking about mental health and helping with marketing. And socializing and marketing and mental health are his favorite things. So this was the perfect fit. Well, fast forward a little bit, he did get the job. He started with his job. We were very, very excited about it. And just a little while after working there, maybe a week or less than 2 weeks, someone else came in, a woman, and she was pretty aggressive about getting this job. And they turned her down, and they said they'd already filled the position. But then she went on and went to the owners and didn't take no for an answer. She's very persistent, which ended up working out for her, but not for our family. And she convinced them that they couldn't say no to her, essentially. So he lost that job, and this was something we were not expecting. Obviously, like all of you in your situations, these trials were not on the docket, not something you're prepared for. Now, there are certain ways we were prepared. We were prepared with food storage, like things in the pantry and canned goods and things like that. And because I am starting a business and I had scaled back on all of my clients, not all of them, but scaled back significantly to build something that would help us be much more self-reliant over time, there was not that buffer that there normally might have been. And we have a family of 7. So after being in this situation of changing jobs and then losing a job and not having paychecks for quite a while when he's the primary breadwinner at this time, was something we didn't prepare for. We didn't think was going to happen because things have been so steady in that way for quite a while. I was really surprised at first that I seemed okay, like, oh yeah, we'll navigate this. We've done this many times before. Well, in the first 10 years of our marriage, this happened quite a bit. So we are not new to this trial. And that right there elicits some shame for me because I have done this before. We've been through this many, many times. We always know we make it through. We always find the help that we need, and through it all, generally, we grow closer. Now, there's ups and downs in the middle of those, but generally we get through it. Well, this time I thought that I was getting through it well, and my husband was experiencing this up and down roller coaster that's very natural. And the purpose in me telling you this is to help you understand that even if you're responding in one way, your spouse might be responding in other ways, or your other family members. But he was having ups and downs of insecurity and anger and frustration and a lot of faith. It was just up and down the whole time. So I felt like this was an opportunity for me to be supportive to him and to not react if he wasn't his best self, and just try to give more, be home more for the kids so that he could get out and just be alone or process or look for jobs, whatever he needed. Then this weekend, he left for a couple days just to go get in the mountains, to get away and to just be alone for a while to work through all this for himself. And I was fully supportive of that, but I was shocked because once he left, I could not stop crying. And I did not anticipate that. I was so emotional. And the conclusion that I came to is I had been trying to be there for everyone, but I hadn't tended my own fears or my own insecurities, and that past trauma of losing all those jobs, of feeling unsafe, of feeling shame, of feeling that we were back in the same situation and we are not as resilient, we're going to be judged, or we should be so much further along than this. This shouldn't keep happening. Like, there's so many layers of shame there that I didn't realize were there because I was trying to hold up the fort, in a sense, for everyone else. We hadn't told our kids at this time because we didn't want to worry them initially before we had a game plan, according to my husband's request. So I waited. Then the questions eventually started to come as time went on, like the calls from the school about needing more school lunch money, or the kids wanting snacks for school, or wondering why we weren't going grocery shopping, and the pantry and the fridge getting more and more sparse. And as those questions kept increasing, and as my husband still wasn't quite ready to talk about it with the family, I just started to cry every time somebody asked me one of those questions. And I didn't know what to do with that. And again, there comes that shame. I'm a therapist. My husband's a therapist. And there was shame. And there was heartache that I couldn't provide that right now. And there was also some level of pride, like, we can do hard things. Look at us. We don't need to have a stocked fridge. We don't need to have our go-to staples in our pantry. We can make do with minimal things. We are fine. So it was this up and down and up and down, and I didn't have the space, being the primary person at home, to be alone and to process and to understand those complex emotions. Now, before I go on with my story, I want to turn this around and share how this can apply to you. Navigating unexpected family challenges can feel like riding an emotional roller coaster. When we can understand those up and downs, it can really help us stay grounded. Now let's talk about that range of emotions that you might be experiencing. You might have experienced fear or anger or sadness, maybe confusion, or that shame that I mentioned. There are some practical strategies for better emotional regulation. For example, mindfulness exercises. This can be deep breathing or guided meditations that you can find on things like Insight Timer or YouTube. Journaling is a huge one. I talk about that a lot. You might remember things that I've said, but this will help you in your processing, especially if it's harder for you to do so. If it's difficult to tune into feelings, print out a feelings wheel. I think it's feelingswheel.com. And put it in your journal and just identify which feelings you're feeling. You're going to be surprised that there are probably about 5 or 7 emotions that we list, and beyond that, we don't really notice the other ones until we see a list in front of us. We're like, oh yeah, that's what I'm feeling, but I hadn't really thought about that one before. It's also important, as always, to prioritize self-care. This helps with your mental and emotional well-being. For example, going back to my experience, I did express to my husband later on when he got home that I really needed some personal time. Now, at the time my mother was visiting, I felt too guilty to take it, so I just took some moments, but really what I needed was hours. I was so threadbare. I was so saturated with feelings that it was almost painful to be around people. And now it's not always like that, but it had been this slow buildup that I wasn't prepared for. And I want you to think about your own experience. Do you feel really threadbare? Do you feel like it's been building up like that volcano? If that is you, remember that analogy of that bucket? If your bucket is so empty, if your gas tank is so empty, you're not going to be able to manage the other things, let alone these unexpected trials. So allow yourself to take that time. Now, I wish I would have taken more time. My mother would have understood, but I was already feeling guilty about her minimal time there, and I didn't want her to feel even worse. But it was hard to smile. It was hard to be present. It was hard to be anything. So I could have done that better, and I plan to next time. I did learn from it. Instead, with those stolen moments that I could get, which were not very much in a family of 7 and then somebody visiting, I practice escapism. Now, if you don't know what this is, this very much is going to apply to your unexpected trial, so listen up. Escapism is when someone tries to avoid or ignore their problems, or even those worries, by getting lost in activities like watching TV or playing video games or daydreaming or being on your phone, whatever it might be. I see this all the time, and for me, it's not usually things like TV or video games, but it might be productivity. It might be cleaning or moving or getting immersed in tasks that the kids need. It might be a game on my phone occasionally. It just depends, but there's moments where I can just not think or feel. So if this is you, I encourage you just to take the time to process those feelings. For example, I felt things like, I'm supposed to be a leader. I'm a therapist. My mom's visiting and I feel so bad. Like all of these things that were hard for me to accept. People are going to think less of me when I'm supposed to have this figured out. I'm happy and I'm fulfilled. These things are still happening to me. These setbacks. There's a lot of embarrassment. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of those elements. And you might not be telling yourself that because you're not a therapist or maybe this type of leader. And yet I'm sure you're having similar feelings and that dialogue that's going on in your mind. Family trials can create ripples that affect each family member differently. Recognizing and addressing these unique reactions is key to maintaining family cohesion and resilience. Now, you might have noticed that in your own trial. You might have noticed that your daughter is shutting down more and your son is getting more angry, or vice versa. Everybody responds differently. Maybe there's more teasing. Maybe there's more defiance. Well, I've noticed all of those things. My kids didn't want to go to church and they were fighting me a lot more than usual. Then that just adds those layers of shame, like, oh, I should be a better mother. My kids are not being kind. They're not being loving. I'm doing it wrong. When you're already feeling so sad and down. So you're not thinking as clearly. Do you notice that in yourself? And also the different ages impacts how your family responds. For example, your teenagers might be more defiant, or your younger children might be more needy and clingy. Maybe your spouse is more aggressive than normal. Usually not in a harmful way, but in a more frustrated way where they feel out of control. This happened with my kids as well, especially as they started to ask more questions about food and about money and things like that, or planning vacations and all of these questions that they had that I didn't know how to answer while being respectful to my husband's requests. Now, eventually, I just realized this is not fair to my kids. I need to give them something. At that point, I was more open with them. I took them aside one by one, and I was empathetic, and I gave them that mutual support, and this is something that you can do. You can apologize for your part in making it maybe more challenging for them. If they felt afraid or if they felt confused, you can apologize and take ownership. You can normalize their feelings of fear or uncertainty. Model that feeling of feelings for them and being open and vulnerable in these conversations so that they know it's okay for them to do so as well. Sometimes I have a lot of shame when I respond to family members initially with impatience or irritation or anger, and those haunt me sometimes. And I'm pretty good at going back and making amends. So maybe you're like me and working on that first part. Give yourself some grace and just work on the second part for now. That 1%. Go back and own your part. Give them an opportunity to share their feelings and then validate their perspectives and those feelings without getting defensive. Another thing that you can do to help with that turbulence and those family ripples is to establish some routines and set boundaries. Spend some time together, even if it's a little bit, that quality over that quantity. So this can look like cuddling and talking for a few minutes, one-on-one. This can look like voicing your needs and allowing them to voice their needs. For example, my need for quiet time so I could process in a healthy way and not just that escapism, but to journal or to talk with a close friend or whatever that might be. Another element I want to say to that is sometimes it's not the appropriate time to process because of other things going on, and maybe there's not enough time to do so. Maybe it takes you a little longer to process like it does me. If that is you, that's okay. Just tell yourself that you're going to get there and you're not quite ready yet. Maybe circumstantially, or maybe you just are not ready to move on. You just need to nurse your wounds a little bit, but you know that you will move forward. All right, let's talk about the aftermath. How do you move forward? How do you heal? Well, this requires patience and compassion and resilience. Sometimes I think that we find fulfillment only afterwards, or when we are on vacation and happy and sipping that drink on the beach or something. Well, that's not really true. Remember that growth comes from progress. And often that progress comes in the midst of challenges, or maybe even just after. It doesn't really come with ease. So trials are part of finding fulfillment. Okay, maybe you need some actionable steps with coping with the aftermath of family trials. Like I mentioned earlier, you can find a therapist. Engage in that self-reflection. Talk as a family about the lessons learned from that experience, or that post-traumatic growth that I've talked about before. Maybe you can talk about the importance of realistic goal setting or the expectations. For example, we don't have a lot of money right now in this in-between stage, and that's okay. We need to have some realistic expectations. We're not going to be taking any trips. We're not going to be doing extra events, and that's okay for right now. But we can set a goal for maybe setting aside a little bit to go have ice cream together one night, or something to not get so stuck in the scarcity mindset either. Whatever that can be. Or realistic goals could involve our feelings. Like, hey, let's just write in our journal once this week and check in with each other how that went, how we're feeling. Or maybe that nightly cuddle with rotating the children each night and giving them that time to share their experience so they can process with you. Another crucial step is remembering the importance of forgiveness, both for yourself and others. So for me, that could be forgiveness for that woman that hijacked my husband's job. And that might come over time. Maybe I don't have to do that all at once, but that's something I can begin to open my heart to. Maybe that's forgiveness for myself for not taking the time that I needed, not being assertive enough. Maybe that's for my husband for his ups and downs and leaving me in charge when I needed some self-care too. Whatever that looks like, and imagine your own scenario here. Remember that as you find meaning in adversity, your resilience will increase, and that also increases your personal growth and fulfillment. In the face of unexpected family trials, fulfillment and resilience results as we give ourselves compassion and grace. Only then will we be able to move forward and embrace these challenges with courage, because we're going to need that courage. And we'll emerge stronger and more fulfilled than ever before. I hope this helped you, my friends. I know we are all experiencing our own trials and challenges regularly, sometimes much closer together than we want. I hope these steps help you. And if you are a person of faith, one thing I want to briefly mention is cultivate that faith during this experience too. That humility, that patience. And lean on a higher power for help, for that enabling power, that power beyond your own. Because in situations like this, it's crucial towards healing. And if you do not have those values, you can apply those same principles even still. By offering yourself that grace and reaching out to others, other mentors, other loved ones, to help you find some of that additional strength and power that you might need that's beyond your own. All right, friends, best of luck in your endeavors, and we will see you back here so soon. As always, take care. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, chances are someone else would too. Would you take 30 seconds to share this with a friend who's looking for greater family fulfillment? And while you're sharing, tell me what you think about the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It refuels me when I hear this podcast is helping you. No matter what your house or your hair looks like, I'll meet you back here every Monday and Thursday morning for more episodes. Until then.